Hello, this is DJ Morena Libre.
And this is DJ JC. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to everyone.
What a pour down. Oh my
Goodness,
gosh.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
terrible weather. Walking into the studio, I didn't bring an umbrella.
You didn't?
I didn't bring an umbrella. So
And then
I
you
have to
wore
wear
white
my
shoes.
Yes, I wear white shoes. So, yes. Yeah. But, yeah. So just a quick shout out to some friends from West Texas that are listening. Thank you so much for tuning into the show.
West Texas.
So, yes.
Cool.
From University of Texas Permian Basin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have some friends up there. So muchas gracias. Thank you so much for being online with us today.
So for new listeners, this is the La Hora Feminista, the Feminist Hour, and I'm DJ Morena Libre. I'm also known throughout the day as Silvia Solis.
And this is DJ JC, also known as Joy Chiritos during the day. so yes, thank you so much for joining us. And I mean, the weather in Bronzeville is kind of rough, as we were talking about earlier, and I think it's supposed to be like this for the rest of the weekend.
Yes,
So,
I believe so.
Yes,
Yeah.
until Sunday, I believe it clears up.
Yeah,
At least
yeah.
here in Bronzeville. So
Okay,
yeah. So
well-
be careful, be safe.
Be safe. And we have a guest today, and we're really excited. You're going to be
Yes.
our first live guest.
Ooh.
Yes, as well. So we have Nancy Guevara, and she is an author and an artist and an activist, and she does many roles. She plays many roles in our community. So we're really excited to have you, and I would like for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's the first time I do something live, and so mira, watch out. No sé qué va a salir.
Nosotros también. Video live.
It's a normal thing for us every week, so it's okay.
So yeah, thank you all for inviting me. I have been living here in Brownsville for the past 8 years. I love Brownsville. I'm a fan of Brownsville. I'm originally from Laredo. I was born and raised in Laredo, Texas, with my mom, who's a fronteriza.
Go ahead.
And so I love the 956. Laredo is also 956.
Ah.
Mira, and when I came here, people were very adamant about saying, you're not from the valley, you're not from the valley.
Really?
Sí, pero I am from the 956 also.
Hey,
Because
puro
Laredo is
956.
956.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of similarities between Laredo and Brownsville. You know, we're fighting a lot of the same fights around protecting the river, protecting the environment, fighting against the border wall, and so we're very related in that way. So I'm an artist and I'm an activist, and recently also a children's book author, and I've been doing art for a long time. I started when I was really young, and I've just always connected art and activism together. It's been one and the same for me. It's very connected. It's very, they go hand in hand, really, art and activism. And so yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about the fellowships. I really want you to show off and brag about your fellowships, the grants that you've received as an artist, right, and also as an activist. So if you can share
Yeah,
it was a
sure.
National Education Association. You also got. Well, I'll let you
Okay.
brag.
Yeah, sometimes, mira, that we're taught to be a little bit more humilde, but
Yes.
that's not necessarily good all the
No.
time, ¿verdad? But so right after college, I went to, I left Laredo when I was 18, moved to Austin, which is very different.
Yeah?
Very different kind of culture shock. And so I completed a degree in design from the University of Texas. And soon after, I applied for a Fulbright. And I applied to do the Fulbright in Mexico City. And I was able to go to Mexico City afterwards, which was a big, big experience for me. I did not go to Mexico beyond Nuevo Laredo. I did not know Mexico beyond the border. And so living and working in Mexico City for a year was just like opened up my eyes to a lot, right? And also just like having more international, right, like consciousness and not being so U.S. centric, right?
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
think when we grow up here, even if it's on the border, we're still kind of in this like U.S. Bubble. So yeah, I was able to do that Fulbright fellowship. After that, I was like, hey, I studied art and design. Like, I want to work in the profession that I studied, right? And it's often really hard for artists once they get out of college, and I'm sure a lot of students here experience that, right? It's like, how can we now be artists or designers or illustrators, right? It's really hard because, you know, sometimes people are like, well, if you can't get an art job, just get any job or just get a real job, right? In
Yes.
quotations. So I was like, you know what? It doesn't, and this is really hard.
Yeah.
You know, for someone that is first gen, grew up with immigrant parents, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter how much I make. I want to work as an artist. And that was a very difficult decision to make as a young person, right? Because it's very uncertain also. But what I did is I started applying for fellowships. Like, I mean, the Fulbright was the first fellowship, right? Then I went to grad school in the East Coast. And then after that, I was like, learning about artist residencies and other fellowships, and so I continued to apply for them. I received an artist residence with DS4SI, which is a great organization based in Boston that does social justice driven design. And so that kind of sparked me, you know, if I could get the Fulbright, if I could get an artist in residence in Boston, I could keep getting artist in residencies or fellowships, right? So that actually brought me to Brownsville.
Really?
So I was getting cold in Boston. Mira,
Yeah.
está muy frío ya. Like, you need your special socks, you need your special gloves, you need everything special. I was like, I kind of am ready to move somewhere else. So actually, I heard about this artist in residence here in Brownsville, and it was like one of the first ones, and it was funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, right?
Oh, nice.
It was a Our Town grant that an organization, I think, called BC Workshopped and in the city of Brownsville.
Okay.
Had you been to Brownsville before?
I had not
You had
been
never
to
been to
Brownsville
Brownsville.
before. I think I remember just going to the beach once.
Well, probably a spring break. No,
Yeah.
no. That's
No, I wasn't.
She wasn't no, she stayed behind and was studying and doing research at the library during that
Yeah,
time.
she was.
Yes.
she's catching
No
up on her
spring break.
baby.
See, I
don't
was
know.
not very crazy. That's surprising. But yeah, I heard about the residency, and I applied, and you know, they were like, you've been accepted, and then I was like, how am I going to move to Boston, from Boston to Brownsville?
It's a long drive.
Good thing I didn't have a lot of things. You know, as an artist, I've always tried to like keep it, like not have a lot of things, kind of have just like my art supplies and my books, and you know, and I moved from Boston to Brownsville, and from there I fell in love with Brownsville. The nature here is incredible. The water, the resacas, the ocean. I mean, I love Laredo. But we don't have an ocean there. I mean, it's a really special place here.
It is.
Yeah.
What year did you arrive, Nancy?
What year did I arrive? 2016.
Okay, 2016.
2016. And so from there, I started working collaboratively with other artists, and we were able to apply to Art Place America, which was active for 10 years and would fund projects around the nation on creative placemaking or creative placekeeping. And so we were able to get that Art Place America grant. We also applied for a Blade of Grass Fellowship, which is also a national fellowship based in New York. And we were also able to do that. After I started, I decided I wanted to go more independent, right? And I kept applying for grants, and so there was the NALAC. NALAC is a very important organization that, and there's a border narrative change initiative through NALAC and through the Ford Foundation, and so I was able to apply to that as well. And after that, there was a fellowship with the New York Foundation for the Arts, and it was called Anonymous Was a Woman, and I was also able to apply for that fellowship through an environmental centered project, which is to help protect Boca Chica Beach by also talking about the history, the untold history of this area and how it connects to environmental extraction and what's happening right now with Boca Chica Beach, with SpaceX being there and using it as their testing grounds, right? Applying for permits to dump 200,000 gallons of wastewater per day. That's a permit that they just applied for. Also, testing rockets and technology that has never been tested before, and the earthquake that it created here.
And then we don't know what chemicals are being released. Yeah, they're not being transparent.
I saw that in one of your videos that you were awakened by what felt like an earthquake.
Oh yeah, it was scary because the reason I have experienced earthquakes before is that year in Mexico City, right?
You mentioned
and
that.
I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, wait, where am I, kind of thing. Like, I was like, am I in Mexico City? Like, it did feel like that, and it felt very scary and terrifying. And, the environmental work here is also trying to protect our environment against LNG natural gas pipelines. There's proposed pipelines from different companies, and they would be essentially, if they moved here, they would be the biggest polluter in the area. And so we have such an abundance here of wildlife, biodiversity. This is an important migratory route for butterflies and for birds. We have a huge ecotourism, right, economy that brings in a lot of money. And it brings in a lot of people to bird watch. I mean, it's a very rich, culturally rich place. And so we're just essentially basically trying to protect that, right? To protect the wildlife and to protect our health, right? Our health is dependent on the health of our ecosystem, right? We're connected. And so, yeah, that's the work
That you're doing.
that I'm doing currently.
Yeah. Oh, so I want to go back to that because I'm fascinated by your work. I'm always observing you and just in awe of you. But I want our listeners to know or to understand, and I want to understand, what were your influences early on in your life, right, that led you to be who you are as an artist and as an activist?
Yeah.
And what came first, the activism or the art?
Ooh.
Like the chicken and the egg, right?
I was like, wait. So I started, like a lot of kids, like a lot of young people, this is a very common narrative. I started drawing very young, and I just loved that feeling of, I was expressing myself. I was kind of taking my feelings, my thoughts out and expressing it onto a page, into different materials, right? And so, like a lot of children and young people, I started very young. I love to draw. I was kind of practicing my imagination so young. My household was not the calmest.
Sure, many of us can relate to that.
And so, when you're young and you're trying to create like your own space, you really rely on kind of flexing that imagination muscle, right? You're creating your own world. And so I started really young with that. And also, my mom was always very creative. She was a costurera. She was, she always says that she studied cortes y, I forgot the other word in Spanish.
Cortes.
Conflicción. No, no sé.
Yeah,
Cortes, yeah, because there was, she was a street vendor for a long time, and then she was like, I want to study something different. In Mexico, there's actually some trainings that people can do for free. So she studied, how to sew
Costura.
and how to costura, right? How to make patterns. And she actually worked at a dress factory. And so at home, she had a sewing machine. At home, she would sew us like Halloween costumes. She would sew us like outfits sometimes. I mean, she even like sewed my older sisters like their like prom dresses.
Yeah, my grandmother did it too. I grew up with a costurera too. Yeah.
And you're just like, I was just like very interested and very in awe of like that process, right? And so because I showed interest, my mom started showing me how to sew and how to use the sewing machine, ¿verdad? When we would go to the store, she would be like, pick out a fabric from the dollar bin.
Yeah.
So I was like, one of the exciting things we would do on Sunday, I would go pick out, a fabric that I liked. I started making stuff for my Barbies, and I did play with Barbies.
You played.
Sorry. I know that was. I know that's.
Yeah.
We had a whole semester on Barbie.
It started with the Barbie movie and ended with the Barbie movie.
Yeah,
So, yes.
I was like, pero sewing outfits for the dolls, sewing stuff for the house. I really like this, the work of Amalia Mesa Baines. She's an artist and a writer, and she talks about la domesticana, how women use rascuachismo and to create their own, sense of place and solace in their house. And so I feel like that was what my mom was doing, and that was what then I started doing. I started wanting to decorate my space, right? Even if it was a shared space always. I had my, I had my corner or my space where I could, craft it the way I wanted to. Yeah.
So you started young,
Yes.
and then I think for me, what was so interesting about that is your mother's influence, right? In your art style, right? In your form, I guess, right? And also in that influence of activism a little bit, right? Like for me, I see it's just her getting an education, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do to make a living that is probably a little bit more sustainable, right? Than what, I don't know what she was doing before, but probably thinking about her children, and which is a lot of the women that you've worked with, right? Especially here in Brownsville.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like I've always been surrounded by strong women. I think, I can't pinpoint exactly where the activism started, but mira, my grandma and my mom are very strong women that are norteñas. Well, my mom more than my grandma, because my grandma's from Aguascalientes. But I sometimes tell my mom, like, Mom, ¿por qué estás gritando? And she's like, no, así es mi
hablo,
voz.
sí.
Así es mi voz. Like, Estoy hablando. And because I feel like I grew up observing these women and that they did not stay silent, I think now that I'm thinking about it, now that I'm reflecting on it on this live show,
So it all came down to this moment.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they were a very strong influence because I did see women that did not stay silent, that spoke up, even against daily injustices. They were like, nope, no me hablas así. My grandma was very outspoken. Also, is very outspoken.
Yeah. So they're still with you today.
Yeah, my grandma's gonna be 94, and then my mom is in Laredo, still fronteriza, still loves to go to Nuevo Laredo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Todavía se puede. Like because in Bronzeville, like in Matamoros, it's still like the narrative around Matamoros, right? It's that it's very violent, and then you hear these stories, right? So a lot of people hesitate going back, or have to make a plan, right? Of where we're gonna go, how we're gonna get there.
And this is when we come back.
Yeah, like people are more
the same thing
vigilant.
Yeah, I mean Nuevo Laredo's the same, but the thing is that because she grew up there, I think there's a different. I didn't grow up in Nuevo Laredo. And so I don't know what it feels like to, go back to a place where you grew up, where it's like it's more dangerous than it was when you were growing up. So, but I can still imagine that you still have these like really deep connections, right? And the thing about Mexico is that people in Mexico are more outside. There's more public spaces. People are walking. People are talking to each other more. I think it's there's a difference between over there and just crossing the bridge. I think this the U.S. individualism seeps more here, maybe.
And it seeps into the designs of the cities, right? Where we here, as there is a lot, maybe because of, especially in Bronzeville, right? Because there's so much. There's so many areas where people could go, but they're not built in a way where it's completely safe, right? Or the certain parks are in certain areas,
or very inviting.
Like I was talking to my students yesterday about Bronzeville, right? And just we were talking about feminism, but also the built environment. And I was asking them, like, what is it that let's be honest, like, what is it that you don't like about Bronzeville? Right? So I had a student, I think he had been waiting for somebody to ask him that question because he came up with like a whole list of things. He was like, I was waiting for somebody to ask me this. Because we are trying to uplift these border narratives, right? But at the same time, we also have to come to terms with what's wrong with our cities, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's trash. All the there's trash all over the place, right? And then also there's not a walkable city. Students were saying, like, we can't walk anywhere. We can't even walk like to the store like down the street, and it's that so much cement. Like it's so gray that there's not enough greenery. There's not enough trees. Even they were talking about the design of the architecture. Like it's just not, it's not beautiful. Like it's not. They don't find it beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. So for me, I think it's really important that, I think as an artist, right, you pay attention to the aesthetics, right, of a place, because that's part of the environment, right? We're building our own environment.
Yeah.
So what are our cities doing to help us want to be there and want to
be more communal, really?
Yes.
Because I feel like that's something that is missing, and it's something, where I live, I can't just like leave and like go on a walk because there's like a major street. Right?
With a lot of traffic.
So I mean, and the thing is, in living and visiting Mexico City, it's very walkable there, and a lot of it has to do with the public transportation too. I mean, I wish there was. I mean, I know that we have public transportation here. We have buses. They don't come as often. There's not as many routes. But I feel like if there was more infrastructure around public transportation, and also another project that I worked on some years ago was the fact that street vending is illegal here.
It is.
It is. And so there's street vendors or informal food vendors that get, what is it, penalties?
Or
Fines. They
Yeah.
get fined, yeah.
They get fined for selling their goods. And so that's another thing that could kind of activate public spaces, right? If we had a good transportation system where I'm like, hey, I have a car, but it's more convenient to take the bus downtown or take all these routes, right? If buses came more often, if there was more public spaces, and if there was street vendors and vendors activating public spaces, then maybe we could turn this place into a more communal space, right? Pero mira, I don't know. I'm not also... I feel like we could do a lot. I think there are very serious barriers in the city.
There are.
And so I often talk to community members and they're like, we have all these ideas. People have ideas. It's just really hard to
Kind of get them off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Because we all travel. Right? Well, many people can travel and they go on vacation, those that can, right? And those that can have capital. So that means that they're going to they're being exposed to other areas in the U.S. or in Mexico or somewhere else, right? So they're seeing how life can be different, right? And yet we come back and nothing seems to change, right? Like there's very little push. So I know from the time that I've moved back, it's been about 2.5 years now. Now there's a bike, right? The bike trail, right? But I know that took a long time.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of people to try and bring that to even happen, right? And then there's issues with the name around some of the trails, right, that were selected because of the history of the people that they're named after. But I mean, that was a great move. It didn't have. I don't think it should have taken that long, nor that much push, or to be able to be done, right? I have a friend, and we have a mutual friend who's looking at the history of bike trails.
Wow.
But for me, it's those things are easy to do, and I still don't maybe you can help me with this, but I don't understand why we don't have a more robust ecotourism. Right? I mean, if we, it's contrary, right? It's contradictory. Because I hear people in the commissions, I hear people in the city government talk about how there is ecotourist money, and but then they're inviting businesses and industries that are contradictory to that, right? And that are going to ruin that revenue, right? People are not going to come back over here for birding when there's not going to be any more birds that are going to be migrating through here, right?
Right.
Because of SpaceX or LNG or etc. So maybe you can explain to me some of the, no, not explain it, but maybe you have some insight, like in your activism, because I know you've been involved in different spaces within the city, right? And trying to raise awareness on the detriment of these industries coming in and harming our environment. Maybe what are you running into? What are some of the narratives that you're hearing that justify these industries coming in and taking over?
Right. So that is a question I also have of why you know, if we're trying to celebrate or, you know, center ecotourism, why are we also inviting industry that will be extractive and be detrimental to our wildlife, our ecosystem, right? That's the same that's the same question, and I feel like, you know, for folks listening, I think we need to have these questions, and we need to, you know, to ask them directly towards the city government. From the narratives that I've heard from city government and also like the economic arms of the city, which is GBIC and BCIC, is that these industries will bring jobs. But that's the only.
That's an old narrative.
Old narrative.
Very old narrative.
That's
colonial.
Yes. And so I'm kind of at the point of, I'm like, are they misinformed, or are they like, you know, taking political hush money from these corporations? Like, what is happening? I think I think we're in the same boat. I don't know, and I you know, we as activists try to make sure to go to city meetings, do public testimonies. Yesterday there was a town hall meeting at BCIC where they wanted to have folks come in from Brownsville and talk about what their vision is of the future of Brownsville. Right? It was kind of weirdly, you know, formatted. But, you know, some of us that are in the environmental activism here are trying to show up to these meetings and trying to talk about our concerns with the environment. I think what I run into personally is that people don't, it's like we say climate crisis, or that we're in a climate vulnerable location because we're in the coast. It's like it doesn't hit them.
It doesn't register.
It doesn't register. It doesn't.
It means nothing at some point to some people, no?
I'm just not sure if elected officials or people in leadership are misinformed, or they're informed but still want to continue bringing these industries, which for me it seems like a risk, right? A huge risk, right? And I feel it. The urgency, I feel it like in my body, and a lot of activists here do also. And, you know, with the climate change discussion that is happening around the country and, you know, globally, we don't have a lot of time, right? And so the urgency is real. These public officials, like Mayor Cowan, after the earthquake, there was a post that was like celebrating, you know, the launch, right? And so it doesn't make sense, because also there have been many communities that have spoken out, like the city of Port Isabel, the Laguna Vista people, and many more that have spoken out and have raised concerns over these extractive companies. And so I think we do need to change the narrative. I'm not always like, you know, thinking about city folks or trying to bother city folks, because I'm kind of like, mira, they're in another world, and I'm an artist, and I need to, you know, work on true narratives and on bringing, you know, helping spread true narratives of this place, and the issues of this place. And I mean, that's why I'm working at the Center for Cultural Power, because they believe in the power of narrative change, right? And that culture moves faster than politicians and policy. And so what are we doing on the ground to like start shifting these false narratives? So these extractive companies are bringing jobs. They're not really bringing that many jobs, and also they are not good paying jobs. A lot of them are not full time, and you know, it's because we live in an area where the minimum wage is still low,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we still, it's convenient for these corporations to move here also, because that means they can pay our workers less.
Yeah.
And so that means that we still continue to be historically a pool of cheap labor
Yeah.
here. And so these are the realities that we want to, that we want to inform people about, and just spread awareness, because a lot of people, in the town hall meeting yesterday, a lot of people in Brownsville, showed up and they were like, we love the environment here. We love the resacas. There's so much like plant life here. We love our beaches. People love to go to the beach. I mean, that's something that we
That's our
all do,
pastime, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Families do that. And so how do we then inform people that these extractive companies are only here to, I mean, the LNG pipelines, they're going to extract natural gas, and they're going to export 100% of that gas. So everything that's extracted, the resources that are extracted are going to be exported. They're not, I mean, they're not really benefiting
No.
locally or domestically, right? And so it's about connecting those two, like GPIC has done some very aggressive advertising and marketing supporting LNG, saying that it's safe and that they're going to bring more jobs. Again, that's the main false narrative, right? But we need to let the community know that these companies being here, these corporations being here, will affect our health, our quality of life, our air quality. I mean, it doesn't, no, ¿cómo se dice?
Well, like,
No, it doesn't benefit us.
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And but it's a lot of narratives that you have to go against, right? Like there's a lot out there. There's a lot of misinformation. But how are you using your art, right, to
Yeah.
be able to change these narratives?
So right now I'm working on a project called Nuestra Delta Mágica. And that's a project, actually we had an art exhibit back in April that exhibited 6 artists. So it was kind of showcasing artists that are already talking about these issues, talking about the environment, talking about the housing prices, and the gentrification. And so it was kind of, centering these artists and cultural workers, right, that are responding to these local issues. But Nuestra Delta Mágica also in the exhibit displayed history, some untold history of South Texas. That connects to environmental extraction, and connects to environmental racism and racism and colonization. And so we made sure to make that exhibit like an educational tool, right? All the sources were there, and the books that we used were displayed there, so people could use it as a library. They could, come back to the exhibit, and I was up for 2 months. Right now, we're kind of putting all that material into a website so that people have access to that history that was told in that exhibit, and also the artists and the artist work. There will also be an archive of more artists doing work around these issues, included in the website.
Were these local artists?
They were local artists. 2 of them live in San Antonio but are from the Valley, so it was local artists and also artists from the Valley that live somewhere else.
Okay.
And a part of, we have an Instagram account where we post really important information of what is happening with LNG and SpaceX. It's called Nuestra Delta Mágica on Instagram and on Facebook. And then currently we are designing, Trucha and I, and the Center for Cultural Power and Nuestra Delta Mágica, are designing a series of workshops where, and they're narrative change workshops, where we will address false narratives in the locally and kind of equipped people with the true narratives that we can, spread to our friends, our family, people in the community. I think the point is that we need to have more of these conversations, right? We need to talk to the people closest to us, to our friends, about these false narratives, and really start to spread like the true story of this place. And so Nuestra Delta Mágica is ongoing, and it's we want to connect untold South Texas history to what's happening currently with the environmental extraction, but also centering and dismantling this false narrative of there's nothing here, right? So I've been talking more about this narrative because we heard it in Laredo 956, and
Just a little, reminder.
We heard it in Laredo. I heard it. I was like, I need to go to school somewhere else. I need to get out of here.
The brain drain, right?
To become someone.
Yeah.
And it really shows a false narrative of our place. I love Laredo now. I love Brownsville. I feel like we have a lot here.
We do.
But it also shows a false narrative of ourselves, because if we think that we're from a place that has nothing, then what do we think about ourselves?
That's true. That's true.
We internalize it.
Yeah, we internalize it. And so we're going to start working in workshops and with people around this narrative, and kind of dismantling that there's nothing here, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot here. It's very abundant here. We have things that are very special here, right?
She keeps track of my time. She's our time tracker too.
No,
I was like, are we at time?
So, do you have another?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so we have a question, our show question. Okay,
We ask every guest.
We ask every guest. What does feminism mean to you?
Ooh. So like I said, I grew up with strong women. And so sometimes when there would be like a man and they would be like, you can't do that, I would be like, what?
What?
I was, and still to this day, I'm like, what world do you live in? Oh, you live in patriarchy. Okay. So feminists, I feel like I'm so appreciative because of the work we're doing. I know how hard this work is, and it's daily, and it never ends. And that was the work that our ancestors and the people that fought in the women's rights movement, in the, all the waves of feminism movements. They fought for us to have rights, and they fought for us to have a certain quality of life. And I am so grateful to those women and to those people, those trans women, those queer folks, right, that fought for our rights. And it tells me that we need to keep fighting every day, because it's not like the fight was won and it's over. It's a daily thing, like, and everyone needs to. It's like the granito de ¿qué? De granito de
No,
the grain of.
Yo
the
soy
grain
bien
of-
mala para los dichos, pero mala.
The grain of sand, like, everyone needs to put
Sí,
their
sí,
part,
sí.
because these movements, these fights are not over. It's a daily thing. And sometimes, mira, I get frustrated.
You were so calm about it.
Sorry. Maybe this is a live.
Mira.
Maybe-
I like that. Mira.
Yeah.
That should be a quote on a T-shirt. Mira.
Mira.
Well, actually, there's a Mira festival this
Really?
weekend
Where?
in Harlingen.
Oh.
Yeah, and at Entre, they have Entre Film Center. There's a film festival, local film festival happening in Harlingen this Saturday, and it starts at noon for y'all to go, and it's called Mira. But I think we need to keep speaking out, and I think as an artist, we have our platform, and we're working to create art around these issues, but we also have to speak up and speak out, because this is a daily fight, and we don't get to just say we're going to stay silent. I mean, we've learned that Palestine has taught me a lot. And we've learned from them that we cannot stay silent on things every day. We need to speak out. And so that's the practice that I want more and more people to have, right? That we need to keep fighting for our rights and our quality of life. It's a daily fight. Yeah.
I thank you. I think that's feminism, right?
Yeah.
At its core. I mean, it's continual, it's lifelong,
Yeah.
and it's life changing and
Yeah.
transformative. And there's different forms of activism, right? But I really admire yours because I like the way you combine yours with your craft, which is art, which is because you're doing what you love, right? It's
Yeah.
just you're passionate, and I can see it in you since I met you. So I really admire you, and I also want to thank you because I was born in Matamoros, and I was raised in Bronzeville. My homelands are my mother's homelands are in San Luis Potosí, right? So I'm in the diaspora, right? But I am a steward of this place, right?
Yes.
I respect it and I love it because I have friends, I have family here, I have a community, and he and I have always been talking about that throughout the entire show. So I really appreciate and I really admire the work that you all are doing because I know it's for the collective, right? I know it's for just to make this place better. And I'm always thinking of the little chiquillos, los chiquitos, when they're out there and you all are doing your activities and how they're picking it all up and how they're going to be learning. And you're throwing like seed bombs, right? Of knowledge and activism. So I really, really do appreciate that. You're doing a lot. You're doing a lot.
Yeah.
You
I guess
know.
that's why I get sleepy a lot. Yeah.
You did, yeah, we were
We're discussing that at the
Thank you,
beginning of the show before we went
Full
online.
circle.
It all comes back full circle. Yeah, we were talking about
Yeah,
that.
community
About
work is really hard. It's a
about
lot of
being
work.
young and being tired.
Yeah.
But it's because of the community work that you're doing. So it's
Yeah,
worth
I appreciate y'all.
Yes.
The affirmation is good, and I just love this place, and I love the people, and we just want to make it better for everyone. And
Y somos gente del río, right?
Yeah.
Don't it's like that's Laredo and Bronzeville and like all these. It's just they're just little borders, right, across the río, alongside the río. But somos gente del río, you know. And it took me 40 some years to come. Like I left, right, to go to college. The same narrative. Right, you have to leave so that you can be something, and then I've been coming back. Over the years, I haven't been able to stay long, like more than a long time. But I come back and I replenish here. This is my place to replenish, and but it took so long for me to. I took an academic conference for me to touch the water in the rio. Right, because they gave us a border tour, right? So we were able to get close to to the river, and that was the first time, and that's been the last since I've been able. Because usually I would just see it crossing the bridge,
Yeah.
and that's back and forth, and I had the privilege of being able to cross it back and forth, right?
Yep.
But I never touched the water. I was just. Yeah, and I was finding like the little hormiguitas that were like on the So yeah,
We are people of the river.
Sí.
And we're taught. Mira, Laredo doesn't have a border wall. They're fighting against the building of a border wall, but we can still see the river. We have a park where we can see the river, but I still feel like I can't get close to it.
Yeah.
And much less touch the water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are like very strong like narratives that were drilled into us.
They
also.
were, and probably the reason why we don't see ourselves as a vulnerable community within climate crisis or climate change, because we don't associate ourselves to those natural spaces, right? Like I talk to the only ones that understand me, my students, are the ones that are anglers, right? Because they go fishing, and they know, they're noticing the change in the water, they're noticing the change in the fish, right?
Yeah.
So they are able to understand what's happening. But my other students are like, I say coastal area, and they're like, it just no les cae el 20,
Yeah.
you know?
I think we need to see ourselves in like the river and see ourselves in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it, like you said, we're river people, and
Sí.
so yeah, we need to start seeing ourselves and then protecting ourselves and protecting our environment, what's around us. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Honestly, yes. it
Thank
was
you.
awesome.
Aquí el timer aquí me está.
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
putting-
right,
She's
time.
giving
yeah,
you the,
she's
she's
like,
giving you the imaginary watch signal.
That's
It's time to go.
good. Hey, it passed by fast. I was
does.
worried.
We were
que no
talking about
voy
it at the beginning.
Que no
If
iba
I
a
could be
tener
able to-
plática de una hora.
no, we
No,
have plenty
right?
to say. We have plenty to say.
And you are welcome to join us anytime. Thank you
Hey,
so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was fun,
Muchas
y'all.
gracias.
It is.
Yeah,
it's
thank you for my first live experience.
Nosotros también.
We've never done that before, so to us, that's you too. Pero no, muchas gracias. Thank you so very
Sí,
much.
thank you all.
And you're always
I
welcome back.
appreciate it.
Yes, and then nuestra Delta Mágica, they can find you there. And then where else? You have your own Instagram.
Yes, so my Instagram is Nancy Guevara, Nansi Guevara, and then you can also find Nuestra Delta Mágica on Instagram.
Okay.
And look out for our website that's going to come out in March, April, where you can read more South Texas history. And yeah.
Yeah.
And
And we
my
really-
website is also nancyguevara.com if you want to see more of my work.
And we do thank you for everything that you're doing for the community.
Thank you.
It means a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people doing a lot of
Yes,
things.
there
I'm
are.
just one of them. Yeah, we'll keep going juntos, ¿verdad?
See,
Sí.
we're all in it together.
Okay, so we're gonna play our final song, and and we want to
You
thank
just said-
I know. Todavía no decidimos. But we want to thank everybody for listening. Have a great weekend.
Yes, stay safe, and if it does continue to rain, please be careful. out there.
Yeah, and tune in next week. So next week we're gonna have a Texas Public Radio reporter, Gage
Yeah.
Davila.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and he'll be talking. We're gonna continue this conversation on environmentalism here in the RGV, right? In the 956. I
In the
should say that. I
956.
should change. That's another narrative that needs to
Include
change.
Laredo.
So everybody, here is Putusa. Let's do this one. So we are gonna end it with Tusa, Carol G, and Nicki Minaj.
Awesome. Have a
Okay.
wonderful weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Hasta luego.
Nice.